Good evening, everyone. I apologize for my tardiness. I want to welcome everyone to Borough Hall. There are 3 items on the agenda this evening, July 8th of 2014. Please note that this hearing is being recorded to comply with the public law for transparency. It will be available for viewing on the Borough Presidents webpage, Brooklyn_USA.org, or on the One Brooklyn channel on YouTube. Web viewers may submit timely comments to Ask Eric at brooklynbp.nyc.gov for Borough President Adams' consideration. Please call the item and let us begin.
Calendar item number 1010610 MMK.
This application submitted by the Department of Transportation seeks to allow the modification of legal grades for the intersection of Empire Boulevard, Flatbush Avenue, and Ocean Avenue to reflect actual constructed conditions of the bridge over the transit right-of-way. Community Board 9 has approved this application with 33 members in favor, 1 against, and 9 abstaining. And I did not introduce myself. I apologize for that. My name is Diana Reina, and I'm the Deputy Borough President. Thank you.
Calendar item number 1 is closed. Calendar item number 2, 140351 PQK.
This application submitted by the Administration for Children's Services and the Administration for Children's Services and the Department of Citywide Administrative Services seeks for the acquisition of property on Sumter Street to ensure the continued provision of child care services to the community of Ocean Hill, Brownsville in Community District 16. Community Board 16 has approved this application with conditions pertaining to having play roof, tiles fixed, and planting of a sidewalk tree with 29 members in favor, 0 against, and 1 abstaining. Would the representative for this application, Kenneth Robinson, please state your name for the record and present the application?
So he's just going to do oral presentation with those slides. You can use the mic right there.
Just 1 second, Mr. Robinson. We just have a one-man show here. We have to give a lot of credit to Joe.
Okay, this working now?
Excellent. Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you, Joe.
Hi, good evening, members of the Borough President staff, members of the community. My name is Kenneth Robinson. I am with ACS, and we are requesting that the Borough President's office approve our application to continue leasing 265 Sumter Avenue for use as a child care center and early learn center. At the moment, this site has served the community as a child care center since the 1970s. At this point, it's slotted to take care of 55 children. At the moment, there are 53, I believe, in there. There's a staff of 15. We have universal pre-K in place. We have early learn in place, and it's near transportation, near the A&C train, near several bus lines, and it does allow parents to have a educational nurturing environment for their small children while they work, go to school, or seek employment, etc.
Thank you so much, Mr. Robinson. I just have a few questions.
Sure.
In the interest of the community for daycare facilities to serve neighborhood residents, when vacancies result from aging out and other circumstances, what is the criteria for selecting the children who will attend these facilities, including those who utilize private slots?
Okay, basically there is community outreach. Most of the children are through ACS. In fact, the 53 children of the 55 are there, and there are approximately 2 children who are private. Basically, there is neighborhood canvassing, there is a parents' council, outreach and recruiting come from there, word of mouth, flyers, and they're the family community engagement staff and volunteers who reach out to the community. The limited private slots are reached out to in the same way.
And I should have asked previous to that question, Mr. Robinson, was the council member whose district this is host in, has she been contacted? Council member Darlene Mealy?
I am not sure if she was directly contacted, but since there was community board involvement, I would assume, because the community board leadership seemed very proactive in this, that they would have gotten in touch with her.
Who would have, for this is going to the city council for approval as well, after
Right.
the borough board, and so, ULURP process, I apologize.
Right.
And so if, is it the Agency for Children's Services that is going to get in touch with her office, or is it DCAS?
It hasn't come up before. I think either could do it. Presumably, Administration for Children's Services would be doing it since we're actually the lead agency on this.
I would advise Mr. Robinson, because we were in touch with Councilmember Mealy's office as to her position on this particular lease and the acquiring of this property to continue.
Right.
And she had not been aware.
Oh,
And
she
so
will-
we just want to make
we'll-
sure.
We'll make sure she's on the loop.
Fantastic. I appreciate that very
Sure.
much. I know that when I was a council member, I didn't want to be the last to find out.
Right.
And as far as the private slots are concerned, I know that you had mentioned there were two private slots occupied of the 55 you
Right.
mentioned.
Right.
And so that's 55 total.
Total, right.
So therefore, the license for this daycare center is at capacity.
Yes.
As far as the policy for the borough president to maximize job opportunities for Brooklynites with local businesses, we want to just understand the opportunities for hiring, apprenticeship opportunities. How is that being encouraged by ACS with the Shirley Chisholm 5 Advent Child Care Center?
Well, basically, the centers do it on their own. They're contract to ACS. ACS doesn't do the hiring. But, of course, they look at, it's basically a citywide
Search?
process. The pre-K, universal pre-K is handled actually by the Department of Education, who's basically running that. And they encourage resumes, and that's basically the information I got for how they recruit. They don't, as far as I know, the current director said they didn't have any specific targeting program for the community, but they have four other facilities. So it would be the Access, the umbrella provider, which would be doing the recruiting, not the individual site.
And are there any vacancies currently at this site?
I was not told that there were. I don't believe
I'm
that.
sorry?
I was not told that there were. We
Okay.
can get back to you with that if necessary.
Fantastic. I would most appreciate it. And as far as the recommendations from the community board regarding the tree pit that is empty in front of
Yes.
the property, is there any discussions with the property owner or any engagement with the agencies to be able to coordinate with the Parks Department to plant a tree?
We will be contacting the Parks Department to plant and maintain a tree at the site.
Fantastic. We appreciate that as well.
you.
And there was concern regarding the conditions of the play roof tiles.
Yes.
That has been addressed?
That has been addressed, and it will be That will be one of the topics in the lease negotiations for the landlord to handle that.
Will it be as part of a rider, or
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. We don't.
do you need someone from the audience?
One of my colleagues who is also here to present, Mr. Bitar, is here. He'll, if I
Mr.
can consult
Bitar,
with
come
him in a
join
second.
Mr. Robinson.
How are we addressing the tile situation? Okay, so that, we're negotiating, we'll be negotiating that part of, yes, we will be addressing that as in the lease negotiations to make sure that the tiles are not only cleaned, but lifted and in shape. At this point, it seems to be in good enough condition to use as a rooftop playground, but it does need work, and we will be addressing that with the landlord.
I want to make sure that
Yes.
the work gets done.
Yes.
This lease is for the amount of annual lease amount? What is the amount on a yearly basis of rent?
We don't, at this point, it's not negotiated yet.
What was the old lease?
You remember that, the old lease? Do you have it with you? Yeah. Okay, we can answer that in a couple of minutes, as soon as Mr. Bitar checks.
So while we get that answer, I just
Okay.
want to make sure, in my experience as a council member,
Yes.
having remembered what would be leases signed off and the lack of accountability on the property owner to do
Yes.
repairs is a serious
I know, which is,
act. And so we don't want to put children in jeopardy.
No.
And anything subpar is not an environment for a child. And so we want to make sure that the investment as far as city taxpayer dollars include what would be the necessary
Okay.
repairs. Whether they're in good condition remains to be seen. Everything needs an upgrade.
yes,
And there's, I'm sure, a substantial amount of rent being paid for the use of this facility. And so it should garner what would be the
Okay.
best of services.
okay, we'll have the answer to that question in a second.
Sure.
Okay, the annual lease from 2008 to present on a monthly is $122,868.41.
122.
$868
Mm-hmm.
and 41 cents.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. And that was a lease for 20 years?
Well, that was the last piece of it.
Correct.
From 2008 on. From 2008 on, it was a 20-year lease, which
So
began at
75 years.
$100,984, and by the terms went up to that amount.
And so this lease, the proposed lease renewal will be to acquire a 20-year lease?
I believe it to be a 5-year lease at this point.
Is there going to be an option to renew?
Yes,
For how long?
for another 5 years, I believe. Yes.
So maximum lease is going to be 10 years.
10 years, then we're back here.
And why is the 20-year option not on the table?
It was a policy decision made a few years ago, not that there'd be more flexibility with shorter leases.
Mm-hmm. And the policy is something that has been implemented across the board for all daycare centers moving forward since that date?
Since that time, that has been the policy for all child care centers.
but it does grandfather in what would be existing leases.
Yeah, I mean, the existing leases will continue till the end of the term. And then we'll be back.
Well, I just want, for the record, to reflect what would be in the best interest of, again, a long-term lease, understanding the constraints of the city and perhaps what have been long-term leases that have hurt the city. There have been long-term leases that have benefited the city, similar to what happened in Williamsburg, where today, if you were to do a 5-year lease, you would not be able to renew that lease. And so the 20-year leases for these daycare centers have been critical. And so what's to come is the question when these neighborhoods start seeing shifts. And it's important that we maintain the infrastructure of daycare services.
Right. Which is why we're here.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just wanted to end the last question I had with part of what we're trying to encourage at Borough Hall for the borough is the sustainable and renewable energy resources. Is there any introduction in this building for sustainable and renewable energy?
Well,
Discussions with the property owner?
I'm not really sure about that. Is that you? I can speak. Mr. Bitarkin, facilities, you can answer.
Are you referring to solar or?
Anything is
Anything-
possible.
anything possible,
Obviously,
yeah.
lighting
We
as
have
low-hanging
not,
fruit.
in general, we have not embarked on in that direction. And it probably has to do, I'm just being frank with, the city has provisions for lower energy costs, you know, like with PASNY or, so it's something that we haven't embarked on
Sure.
direction-wise. But
Sure.
I like what I'm hearing.
I'm happy to hear that you like that. And so we want to be partners with you as an agency.
Okay.
We're going to be asking these questions more often now and across the board. And so we want to make sure that we're leading as a city to be able to take inventory and start introducing the discussions and implementing the execution of sustainable and renewable resources. I think it's just a matter of connecting the dots and asking the question. And so that is what I would like for you to take back to ACS and be able to infer the fact that we want to see what would be an inventory assessment of our daycare centers and what properties are using sustainable and renewable energies and which ones are not, and in your renewal process of leases that this is engaged in as a discussion. Thank you. That's my last question. And I'd love for you to have a seat, and I just wanted to acknowledge the presence of Gigi Davis Elliott, who is the representative chief of staff to Councilmember Mealy, and our next speaker will be Betty M. Collick Wallace, chairperson of Community Board 16.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Betty Colac Wallace, and I'm the chairperson of CB16. I appear before you this evening to express the Community Board support for the Shirley Chisholm 5 Adult Child Center Care Center. On June 24, 2014, during its regular monthly meeting, Community Board 16, having a total membership of 47, voted 29 in favor, 0 against, and 1 abstention to approve the acquisition of property located at 265 Sumter Street, Block 1520, Lot 51, for the continued use as a child care center with the following conditions. Number 1, that the administration of children's services provide needed funds to rehabilitate the roof play area to include new safety floor tiles and play equipment. And number 2, and the final one, that a tree be planted by New York City Department of Parks and Recreation in an existing tree pit in front of 265 Sumter Street. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Betty, and I appreciate your assessment of what would be the property, not just within the four walls, but outside its exterior, and how important it is for the infrastructure to be built so that it can beautify the neighborhood. On this item, are there any other speakers? And so we will close this item, calendar item number 2.
Calendar item number 2 is closed. Calendar item number 3, 140360 PSK.
This application submitted by the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice Coordinator and the Department of Citywide Administrative Services seeks for the acquisition of the 3-story Brownsville Multi-Service Family Health Center on Thomas S. Boylan Street. Such actions would allow the applicant to utilize the majority of the property as the Brownsville Community Justice Center in the Brownsville and Ocean Hill neighborhoods of Community District 16. Community Board 16 has approved this application with a condition pertaining to financial assistance to the nonprofits that would be temporarily relocated, with 27 members in favor, 1 against, and 3 abstaining. Would the representative for this application, Alan Para, please state your name for the record and present the application?
Good evening. My name is Ilan Parra. I'm here on behalf of the Mayor's Office. In support of our application for site selection, we're asking that the Borough Presidents Office approve our application. Just to give you a brief overview of our presentation, I'm going to start out by introducing the Center for Court Innovation, who has been a partner of ours in a lot of the planning and what's involved in doing the work for the Brownsville Community Justice Center. They currently have a presence in Brownsville, and I think that they'd speak very well to the programming and about the community court that we envision in Brownsville moving forward. So I'm going to introduce Viviana Gordon and Erica Mateo to speak about the programming that CCI does.
Excellent.
Thank you, Alon. Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Viviana Gordon, and I'm the Director of Operations at the Brownsville Community Justice Center. I'm here with my colleague Erica Mateo, our Director of Community Initiatives. We're very excited to be here before you today. This has been a culmination of 5 years of research and planning and running programming in Brownsville. And just 2 weeks ago, our Community Board 16, voted to approve our application with a near unanimous vote. I'm going to quickly take you through our journey to get to this point and share our vision for what a justice center will be in Brownsville. It all started back in 2009 when the late Greg Jocko Jackson, who was the unofficial mayor of Brownsville, reached out to us to ask to visit the Red Hook Community Justice Center. Greg had heard the impact that the Justice Center had had in Red Hook and wanted to see the potential for a similar project in Brownsville. Greg knew that the Red Hook Community Justice Center, which is a neighborhood-based community court that hears low-level cases, had a proven track record of success. It's been proven to reduce crime, improve public safety, and reduce the use of incarceration. Specifically, the Red Hook judge gives out 35% fewer jail sentences than Brooklyn's downtown court, and almost never, less than 1% of the time, at arraignment. Additionally, 78% of offenders who come through the Red Hook Court are sentenced to restorative community service or social services, compared to only 22% of cases downtown. Also, defendants who come through the Red Hook Court have a lower recidivism rate than their counterparts downtown. In the last few decades, the Red Hook neighborhood has gone from being known as the Wild West of Brooklyn and the crack capital of America to one of the safest precincts in Brooklyn. But most importantly, the Red Hook project has been embraced by the community. The reason the project was so successful was because the community wanted it, they got behind it, and they played a very significant role in shaping it. Today, the Red Hook Community Justice Center is not seen as an outpost of the state court system, but rather a homegrown institution capable of solving neighborhood problems, providing defendants who come before the court with much-needed services, and holding the justice system accountable for the community's safety and well-being. So after Greg Jackson's visit to Red Hook, the Center for Court Innovation began convening with community leaders and local elected officials to see if there was interest in having a justice center in Brownsville, and we found there was, resoundingly. We then began to host visits of Brownsville's community board members in Red Hook to give everyone the opportunity to see the model firsthand, meet with the judge, and talk with Red Hook residents about how the Justice Center had impacted the neighborhood. Then in 2010, we led a community-wide survey and spoke with over 800 Brownsville residents. We also led focus groups with youth in Brownsville area high schools. What we learned confirmed many of the things we'd already heard, that guns and gangs were of major concern, as well as unemployment, a lack of educational and job training opportunities, and after-school programming for youth. We also found a lot of support, overwhelming support, for bringing a justice center to Brownsville. Once we were convinced we had the community backing for the project, we approached the Office of Court Administration to gain their support and began working with City Council and the Mayor's Office to raise the funds necessary for the building renovation. When we began looking for a building in the community, we considered many options. Those familiar with the Brownsville neighborhood will be able to picture the places I'm talking about. We considered the old bank building on Mother Gaston, the old school on Rockaway, the Verizon building, and the old police precinct. Due to size, safety considerations, and cost, 444 Thomas Boylan was far and away the best option for this project. Additionally, the building owner, HRA, was interested in getting it out of their portfolio because of limitations and their ability to fund much-needed capital improvements for the building. But we didn't want to wait for the building renovation to start solving neighborhood problems and addressing some of the community's concerns that we heard. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Erica Mateo, who oversees all of our youth programming and anti-gun and gang violence work. And she's going to tell you about what we've been doing in Brownsville the last 3 years and some of the results we've already seen.
Good afternoon. Again, my name is Erica, and I'm just going to walk you through a timeline of programming at the Justice Center since we got there in 2011. In 2011, we started off with a youth court. A youth court is a program that trains young people to hear the low-level offenses of other young people. Our young people who sit as the judge and the jury use positive peer pressure to get the other young person who committed an offense to understand how their actions can impact the community and actually divert that young person from going further into the criminal justice system. So it acts as a diversion program where incarceration is not used and it's not an option as a sanction, but rather workshops and different types of programming that engage that young people in understanding the effects of what they did to just come to a better understanding of that. In 2012, we launched the Justice Community Program, which services 60 young people a year between the ages of 16 and 24 years old who have some involvement with the criminal justice system. Their involvement with the criminal justice system ranges from either a transit, like hopping the turnstile, or littering or trespassing, or someone who may be coming home from prison and is on parole. We engage these young people in job training, educational services, and in benefit projects that give back to the community. Examples of projects that we've done in the past are large mural projects, community cleanups, graffiti removals. They've been a part of advocacy workshops. They've been integral in getting other young people involved in programming and positive programming and so forth. In 2013, we launched, finally, because in Brownsville, you can't be in Brownsville without addressing the issue of gun and gang violence, and we launched the Anti-Violence Project. The Anti-Violence Project, it's twofold. A piece of it is launching a campaign, which is basically a public education campaign that aims to change norms around violence, create opportunities for young people, and activate spaces in a positive way in the community, which again engages young people who have been involved with the criminal justice system. Also a part of the Anti-Violence Project is what we have is called a call-in forum. Our call-in forum calls parolees who have been sentenced, who in the past have a gun or a violent crime in their history, who are coming back to Brownsville, and they speak to a panel of people, which includes law enforcement, an ex-offender who has turned his life around, and social service providers who talk to parolees who are returning about making positive changes in their community and taking advantage of services. Last but not least, we've also launched an alternative to incarceration diversion program for 14 to 21-year-olds.
So I'm going to speak a little bit about process and the operation that we envision at the new Justice Center. And a couple of notable points about this project. One thing that I just want to echo that, that Viviana brought up is that this building was an HRA building, and in terms of identifying the appropriate location for this, HRA doesn't have the capacity to be able to maintain, you know, a real estate portfolio the way that DCAS does. And what we envision for this, and one of the things that makes this a great location for us, is that we're not only going to be able to bring the building up to speed, because there's some infrastructure that really has been has to be renewed and has to be basically worked on. The entire infrastructure is going to change in the building. It's going to be all brand new. And HRI didn't have the money for this. And so what we envision is that DCAS is going to become, this is going to go into the DCAS portfolio. DCAS is planning on staffing the building in a manner that would allow for regular maintenance of the building in order so that our investment will last for quite some time. In addition, something else that's unique about this, and I know that Viviana mentioned the Red Hook Community Justice Center, the Red Hook Community Court. Something else that's unique about this is the increased hours that are going to be, that this facility will be open. This is not anything that is available or anything that currently exists in any other court at this point that offers, in any other community court. Midtown Community Court doesn't have it, Red Hook doesn't have it. They run basically court hours. What's envisioned for this building is that there's going to be a programmatic and a services portion of the building, and a court and the secured portion of the building, which will allow the building to be open for services for members of the community to be able to access those services after hours, which I think is something that's a huge benefit, considering a lot of the services that are provided by the community benefit organizations that are in the area. In terms of process, we've been working with the Dormitory Authority for the State of New York. We have a contract with them, and they're going to be project managing and developing, and we've been working with them to do the designs, and they're going to be project managing and doing the construction. We work very closely with them, and as counterparts, they work with us in terms of trying to make sure that everything, that all of the stakeholders and the users in the building currently and in the future, all of their concerns are addressed. Now, because this is an HRA building, HRA currently charges rent through a sponsor to all the tenants that are in the building. The goal is that the leases, I believe, in the building are due, I believe, at the end of the summer. I could be incorrect about the timing, but I know that there will be a lease renewal that will have to happen, and the lease renewal will have a termination provision on notice, which is something that's standard in the existing HRA leases. On June 5th, I believe it was, we worked with CCI and went to the Brownsville Community Justice Center, the existing Brownsville Multi-Service Center. We sat down with all of the tenants that are currently in the building, and we wanted to provide them with all the information that we had at that point in order so that they knew what our plans were, and offered assistance to the extent that we could for them to start to seek out other alternatives for space. One thing that I do also want to highlight is that the scope of this project is limited to only the first and the second floor. The third floor is not within the scope. There are things that are included to allow for continued development of the third floor. For example, the HVA system will be able to carry a load that will be able to incorporate the third floor. Standpipes for the fire system will all be going up to the third floor in order so that if there was future renovation that was going to happen in the building, the infrastructure would be there to support that. In terms of operational overview, I hope that you're able to see this on the projector, and you don't have to actually see in detail exactly what's there, but what this will demonstrate is that the way this building is laid out, I mentioned that we were able to create basically two separate areas, a secured court area and a services area where Legal Aid Society, CCI, and other providers would be able to actually have their offices. This is a floor plan of the first floor, and I'm just going to lean over here.
Sure.
The top portion over here.
You can take
The entrance.
Take the mic.
Oh, good.
You can remove it.
Excellent. Thank you. So the top portion over here is what is envisioned as being the programmatic services area of the building. And the way this building, the footprint of this building allows for this design, and we're working with incredible architects here. The entrance to the building is actually on this side of the building, and the way the foot traffic will come into the building is going to be from the front. All of this area will remain open after hours, and what we've been able to do is corner off a secured area over here on this side of the building, which I guess for all intents and purposes I'll call the south side of the photo. Here's where the courtroom is. There's police holding cell operations. There's a DA's office over here, the court officers, and everything that's related in support of those operations. Because of the footprint and the design here, we were able to actually create a scenario where we're able to keep the services available and open so that we can actually create segregated secured areas that were satisfactory for all the stakeholders that are in the building. Here's this. So one thing that I want to talk about specifically is the holding cell area. I know that there's been some concerns that have been articulated about, well, you know, we're bringing holding cells into this space, and holding cells that weren't there previously. What we're talking about here is only pre-arraignment detention. We're not talking about holding cells that are gonna have folks that are gonna be detained overnight. The period of time that we're anticipating any one person is going to be held as a detainee in this area is going to be not more than the duration of time that court would be open in a single day. If there are cases that come in over the weekend, it's comparable to the way Red Hook works now. Those cases would be sent over to 120 Skimmerhorn where they're currently heard. Based on our conversations with the police department and our internal kind of review of cases, we anticipate a throughput of jail cases that are going to range between 20 and maybe 30 people per day, and there's peaks and troughs, obviously. The majority of the cases that are going to be heard at the new Justice Center are going to be cases that are out cases where people will be coming that are not detained, coming to the community court to handle lower level misdemeanor cases and desk appearance cases and summons cases. The layout here, and this is really just the police area. I'm not going to go into too much detail for this, but I actually have the next one is probably a little bit better. There's a Sally Port area that is existing in the rear of the building that's going to be kind of cornered off. We've specifically asked that the architects use the same fencing that is currently existing around the Brownsville multi-center now so that it matches. We're not looking for a chain link fence. We're looking for this to be aesthetically something that's pleasing to the eye. In addition, we've asked that there be some greenery that be planted in the area of the Sally Port in order so that there's a view not necessarily of the Sally Port, but of some greenery and some trees. Moving in, I guess a little bit more closely in the police holding area, there's a total of 5 holding cells. There's interview spaces, and this is routinely what you would see in a pre-arraignment operation. The police department would manage this exclusively, and it's an area that's completely segregated to the southern portion of the picture in the building. So now just going to the second floor, and there's not really much to talk about with respect to the second floor. It's all operational support. The bottom portion is, again, the secured area, and then the top portion are classrooms and offices that are going to be supporting the social services that are in the building. The third floor, because it's not in the scope of the project, is not, we don't have floor plans of it. But it is office space that we envision will be available for rent for community organizations to come in after the building is completed. So I guess that having been said, here are the last two slides we have are renderings of what we think that this is going to look like. These were put together by the architects, and you can see it looks like it's an open space, a lot of windows that are going to be, you know, a lot of natural light, and it looks like it's going to be very welcoming to the folks that are coming in there. Hopefully we'll be able to make it more appealing for more service organizations to come into the building than currently exists in the multi-service center, which I think is about a third empty right now. So that having been said, I'll turn it over for questions if you have any.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I wanted to just start off with thanking you for addressing the issue as far as the holding cells is concerned. Because there were no holding cells prior to, there is community concern today that there will be moving forward. And this particular explanation as far as no overnight detained individual would remain in the building. They would be served during the court hours. What are the court hours?
The court hours are 9 to 5, or 8 to 4, I guess, but it's business. It's 9 to 5.
9 to 5.
Yeah.
And the Friday cases beyond 5 p.m. would be referred to 120 Skimmerhorn.
Yes. And it's actually before 5 p.m. because there's a processing time that actually
I wanted to hear that. Okay.
that
so
actually plays into that. So this is actually something that's thought out, and it's worked on, you know, at length between Red Hook, and there's constant communication that happens between the police department and the staff in the court in order to ensure that there's no carryover. So the cutoff time actually is earlier than 5 p.m.
Can you just share with us what is the cutoff time on Friday?
At Red Hook, or what will be at Brownsville?
What will be at Brownsville?
Okay, I don't know that we're there yet.
Okay.
But it will be something that's going to be similar to Red Hook.
So due to the fact that it's undetermined at the moment, can I get Red Hook's final hour?
Yeah. Do you know what it is? I'm gonna ask that Viviana.
Apologies, I don't know what it is offhand, but currently we actually also have operations in the central Brooklyn courthouse at 120 Skimmerhorn, in which young people from Brownsville who were initially arraigned downtown will still have the option to accept services and community service sanctions and come back to Brownsville for services at that point.
And the Red Hook?
So I think that what I'll have to do is I'll probably have to get back to you on the time. I imagine that it's in the range of between 12 and 2 o'clock.
Okay. And that would be very helpful,
Okay.
just to be able to address concerns that are being filtered through our office. And I'd imagine that Councilmember Mealy's office as well has been receiving what would be a litany of concern regarding this particular issue.
Okay. There is one more thing I'd like to mention that kind of may address that issue. Right now, what we're envisioning based on numbers is a catchment area of the 73rd precinct, which means no new arrests are going to be coming in to the Community Justice Center at the outset. All of the arrests that we envision that are going to be cases that are coming as detention cases will come from across the street, the 73rd precinct. So those people are already across the street.
Well, that's good to hear as far as just further clarification.
Yes.
I would want no arrests, but you know that's what we're trying to work towards.
Yes.
Do you see a decrease in the Red Hook facility
A decrease
as far as
in
the cases are concerned?
total cases. I don't
On an
have
annual basis?
I don't have data on Red Hook. I didn't expect that we'd
No,
be talking about Red Hook.
I have a habit of asking beyond what would be the land use scope.
I can look into it and I can get back to you on what the cases look like. at Red
And
Hook.
we just want to see what is the qualitative and quantitative data supporting what would be having such a justice center in a community where the impact is a ripple effect of seeing what would be a decrease in cases because there's an improvement of a quality of life, an impact on a youth employment increasing. Brownsville is at double-digit 20 in the 20s as far as unemployment and chronically underemployed individuals, and that continues to just spiral. And so I want to make sure that we engage beyond today on these types of questions and monitoring.
Okay.
Thank you. As far as you went into the services provided. I just want to understand the symbiotic coexisting of shared spaces here. You mentioned secured space, you mentioned unsecured space. In the unsecured space, were you referring to the nonprofits that are there currently who will then move back?
Yes, so the spaces that are the non-secured spaces will be...
If you could go back to slide 1, that would be helpful.
Sure. Okay, so the spaces that are over here are, so for example, the community board currently has an office at the multi-service center. The community board will remain in the new justice center and have space that will be space that will be carved out in this area of the justice center. In this area, the Department of Probation has their NEON program currently at the multi-service center. They'll be returning
To the same space.
to the same space. Well, not exactly the same space, but more or less the same space over here in this portion of the building. This area over here is going to be provided for the defender organizations, the Legal Aid Society, which we've been in touch with, and excuse me, Brooklyn Defenders. On the second floor, these are classroom areas that CCI will be using, and these offices are, Viviana, are these all CCI? I'm sorry. You want to just point to the CCI offices? Yeah, no, not administration, the classes, Yeah. So the social services on the top left portion, and then the classrooms and the classroom areas are going to be on the right side of the yeah, and alternative sanctions is in there also.
So there's a total of how many organizations right now? Nonprofit?
Right now it's CCI. It's really CCI that's coming in and helping to coordinate all the services. So the rest of the third floor is what's envisioned to bring additional non-for-profits into the building.
But currently, there are nonprofits that exist with existing leases.
Yes, and those, I can tell you who those are. The nonprofits that are currently there are Community Solutions, the Center for Court Innovation, the Jewish Child Care Association, the Central Brooklyn Economic Development Corporation, the Department of Probation, the Community Board, SCO Family Services, and the Brooklyn Perinatal Network.
I have 7. Did I miss?
1, 2, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3. Yes, I believe that's correct. And then there are staff from Bed-Stuy Restoration, who is the sponsor, who's also in the building. But those are all of the organizations that are in the building.
And so that's the inventory of the nonprofits that have current leases.
Yes, those are the folks. Bed-Stuy Restoration does not have a lease. They're actually the sponsor.
And there is a Brownsville partnership that is currently part of the tenancy in the building.
Yes.
That is choosing to move out and not move back in.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And are there any expired leases? Are there any expired leases of organizations that have not been accounted for here?
No,
Okay.
not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I had mentioned that on the 5th, in the beginning of June, we conducted a meeting and we invited everyone that was in the building that was a tenant in the building to come in. So and what we did there, just so that you know, is we actually asked DCAS to do a search of available properties in several zip codes in the surrounding area in order so that we can provide leads to all of the folks who are in the building as tenants. We wanted to give them as much notice as possible once we nailed down a construction schedule. That's why we did this in June. So we provided a list of potential leads for lease locations, and there are, for the most part, I believe everyone is accounted for that's currently in the building, with the exception of the Central Brooklyn Economic Development Corporation and the Jewish Child Care Association.
And why is that?
Well, we haven't, there hasn't been, we had this meeting in June.
Right.
So we're working on a solution.
I
So
see.
one of the things, actually, at the community board meeting, that came up was Ms. Washington from the Central Brooklyn Economic Development Corporation raised this concern because she looked at the list we actually circulated at the earlier meeting.
Right.
And was concerned because a lot of the spaces, what becomes problematic is for the smaller programs, they need less space and it's hard to find lease space.
Sure.
What I did was I was able to connect her and her organization with the Jewish Child Care Association, hoping that they could collectively together, have more space need and be able to maybe share space.
Right.
Programmatically, it seemed like it made a lot of sense because there's need for classroom space
Right.
on both.
Both.
From both organizations. And I think that the schedules work well. So, I've been in touch with them, and I'm hoping that they're able to come to some type of a resolution. And
Sure.
if not, then we're going to do what we can to try and assist.
And is there a rent assistance, moving assistance cost?
There was not any rent or moving assistant costs that were budgeted in the project. I think that to the extent that the city, I know that because the Department of Probation and the Community Board, DCAS, maintains a relationship with them, is required to provide space for them. So I know that all of the renters that are in the building are paying X amount of dollars under the existing contract with HRA. The expectation and what we were hopeful for was that on the leads that we provided, that they'd be able to find something comparable. I don't think we've gotten past that.
Right.
I think we've gotten that far.
Right.
So I think that we're waiting to see what potentially could develop between Central Brooklyn Economic Development Corporation and Jewish Child Care Association moving forward. Aside from that, we've been working closely with the community board, facilitating conversations with DCAS, working with the Department of Probation, and working on identifying other locations for the other people. And just SCO Family Services is also going to what is where the Brownsville Partnership is electing to leave and not come back. The SCO Family Services is also electing to leave and not come back. Excuse me.
Sure. It was a cough, not a sneeze. I was going to say God bless you. I wanted to I appreciate the explanation, and that was part of what I was going to ask as far as the Brooklyn Economic Development Corporation.
Okay.
I think you've answered, and it's a remain to be seen scenario
Yeah.
where space is harder to find, and making sure that it's in partnership with another organization for shared spaces shares cost. And
Yeah.
so we would love to just remain in communication as to the progress you're making along those lines for both. We wanted to just understand what actions have been taken to ensure the inclusion of, upon the construction phase, for MWBE participation and local business participation in the construction phases, and just trying to make sure that, I know it's early, we're not there yet, but making sure that there's participation goals. Clearly, Local Law 1 stipulates that for city funding. Obviously, the state does as well, and making sure that this procurement action occurs.
We have a jobs program that we're working with the Dormitory Authority on. We have a representative from the Dormitory Authority who can speak to what's happening in that area.
Fantastic.
His name is Michael Clay, and I'll invite him up to
Fantastic.
speak to that.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you, Mr. Clay?
Good. Thank you, Elon. DASNY, I'm not sure if you're familiar with
Yes.
DASNY, but okay. Under the direction of Paul Williams, who is the president of DASNY, we've had a legacy of M&WBE and workforce participation throughout the borough. Medgar Evers, Brooklyn DDSO, Brooklyn College, just to name a few. Court Officers Training, which is a training academy, which is just starting. So there will be to ease your fears and also the community, there will be MWBE and workforce participation goals. We haven't established those goals yet, but they will be. Typically here in Brooklyn, they're 15% MBE, 9% WBE. Workforce participation is typically 40 and 5, 40%, 5%, 40% minority, 5% female. We'll look at that as the architect and engineer develop the drawings and the specifications. That will be published. That's a contractual requirement in our contract. So as we go through the bidding process to hire a reliable, competent contractor, the MWBE requirements will be a part of their contracts. My particular division, I'm the director of the Opportunity Programs Group. My role is to ensure that this occurs. So we monitor, at this point, our current portfolio of about 900 projects that fall within 15A, as you mentioned earlier. That's the executive law that mandates our MWBE workforce participation. But we're going a little step further. I wonder if you can give me a couple seconds to indulge you and also the folks here to get an understanding of what else, because I feel it's important. We do quite a bit of projects that are community-based projects. These are projects that are in the middle of the community throughout the 5 boroughs. And one of the things that we look at making sure of is that there's meaningful participation. So one of the things that we've done is we've partnered with the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce to look at a robust workforce participation. Obviously, as you mentioned, unemployment is extremely high in the Brownsville area. So one of the things we're looking at is identifying the zip codes surrounding the project, identifying what we can do with a jobs, and that's not really the right wording, jobs, because as you know, this project is not a huge project, unlike some of the ones I mentioned earlier, where there's a bit more robust opportunities for employment. But we're going to maximize the opportunity during the construction phase. But I think it's important to have a process whereby anyone willing and able looking for work, that they will be able to utilize the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce to assess skills, number one. So if there's someone who can work on the project that any of the contractors need, we will refer them, number one. Number two, if there's no opportunities there, that doesn't end there. What do we do, whether that's helping them with GED, helping them get their high school diplomas, or referring them to other organizations throughout the city where we can get them an opportunity where they can get employed. What we will also do is work with some of the tenants in the building who would be able to provide GED and other ancillary kind of services to whoever would come looking for opportunities. We will also, through that process, look at making referrals to whatever member organizations that would match the capabilities of the applicants and ensuring that they're referred where they can get an opportunity to better their lives. That's an important portion for DASNY. It's personally important for me, so we will ensure that that occurs. To that end, DASNY is looking at one of the things, as you're aware of as a former council person here in the city, you're aware of that anyone working in construction has to have the OSHA training, okay, the 10-hour OSHA training. So I'm looking at working with a local community-based organization to sponsor OSHA training for those individuals who have requisite construction experience but may not have the OSHA training. DASNY will sponsor those trainings so that individual or individuals can then go out and find employment anywhere in the city of New York as it relates to construction. The second thing we're doing, or the fourth thing I should say, is we're going to be interacting. This will be a PLA, Project Labor Agreement. This will be a PLA project. So I've had conversations with Gary LaBarber, who is president of the BETA, as you're familiar with, and Gary is a partner with the DASNY and our PLA. I'm looking at apprenticeships. Understanding at this point, opportunities have been limited with organized labor because, as you know, construction has not really been rampant. It's going up, but it's not up to levels it was 3 or 4 years ago. But I'm working with them to identify some areas. I like to get, quite frankly, some high school students, a cross-section of individuals that we can get into a couple of the apprenticeship training programs. I'm not at liberty to tell you numbers because I don't have that for you today, but I will commit to continuing the dialogue with the unions and with Gary to identify helmets to hard hats, construction skills, non-traditional women in employment, finding those where we can plug in the residents of Brownsville to give them an opportunity to employ. And lastly, obviously, we will look to partner with the Brooklyn Borough President's Office if there are other projects here within the borough that we can connect qualified individuals to. We would like to partner with you to help with that interaction also.
Well, Mr. Clay, that's music to our ears, and I would love to share in return. July 31st, we're going to have an MWBE forum here.
Okay.
We're trying to connect what would be opportunities of development to the MWBE community and making sure that the MWBE community of small business owners understand where there is opportunity and what are certain contracts that they would have to be prepared for, and what type of records they would have to have in place as far as experience is concerned, labor is concerned, bonding is concerned, financing is concerned. So we would love to extend that invitation to you. And for you to be here, to be able to communicate a lot of the projects that are happening in Brooklyn and how they can connect with your agency to be able to participate.
I'll be there.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I appreciate that. And ongoing discussions, obviously, are a must.
Okay,
Thank you.
absolutely.
So, as you can see, that was beyond what would be land use once again, but we appreciate it. That's what government is here for. It's navigating it, and we want to make sure that we're connecting all the dots necessary around each project. I wanted to just make sure that I took advantage, and perhaps Mr. Clay sat down too quickly. I actually wanted to make sure we asked the question regarding sustainable and renewable energy opportunities, resources that have been applied or will be applied, have been considered or will be considered to this project. It is our priority at Borough Hall, and we want to make it for all of Brooklyn, and we will be asking for all opportunities to do so.
Well, one thing before Elon makes a comment for you. Any project that DASNY does, it is a company policy that all projects are LEED Silver. And of course, depending on the client, if they would like to go to gold or platinum, that is absolutely, but nothing gets designed and built unless it is silver. And so for this particular project, Elon will go through the specifics. But yes, we are absolutely green, and you will be able to hear a little bit more in detail what those green enhancements will be.
That is fantastic news.
So we are trying to attain LEED Silver on this project. Some of the features that the architects have been working on to achieve that are low water use fixtures, efficient light fixtures, motion sensors to operate the lighting systems, high recycled content materials for the furniture and equipment that's going to be installed, low VOC paint and finishes. In addition, with respect to solar panels, we did inquire of the architects what prospect there would be for solar panels if they were going to come in the future. The roof is actually going to be redone on this building. So the roof will support, according to the architects, solar panels if they were going to come in. However, as part of the installation, subframing would have to be required in order to be able to do that. But the roof would be able to support it.
Are you working with organizations such as Solar One and Green City Force?
No, we haven't. We're not working directly with any solar organizations. In terms of what the scope of the project was, it wasn't contemplated that we were going to go solar on this, but we did at least want to be able to have the facility to be able to, the capacity to be able to do it moving forward.
And what would be required for you to go solar?
I guess money. You know, that's the universal answer, I think. You know, we're working with a pretty tight budget, and the team at DASNY and the architects have been incredible in doing what they've been able to do with our limited budget, and we're really trying to get the most that we can. We really want to get the operational program in place and think about really getting the court in place and the programs back.
And this particular project is being 100% funded by DASNY?
No, DASNY is not funding the project.
Okay.
Funding for the project is coming from the City Council, from the city, from the Mayor's office, and from I believe the Borough President's office also.
And so is there going to be a scope of work with a cost associated to future solar panel installation?
No, there was no plan to do that.
Okay. And is that something that you will be looking to submit for next year as part of the fiscal budget season?
I can't speak to that now, but it's something that we can evaluate.
Fantastic. Excellent. I believe I went through the majority of our questions. I wanted to just end with the opportunity for this particular footprint of city-owned land and the opportunity to build what would be a mixed economic, affordable housing community. Has there been any cross-collaboration with HPD to be able to assess whether or not there's air rights and the capacity to build what would be an opportunity to have the goal of the mayor of building 200,000 units of affordable housing throughout the city as this being one prime site?
There hasn't been, but we can look into it.
I would very much appreciate that, and we will continue to pursue that as part of this particular conversation, to be able to add it to our inventory as points of interest and geo-targeting that specific building footprint as optimal space to be able to assess for capitalizing on the air rights and what could be the potential of additional housing being built, and even more so for the build-out of a mixed economic diversity of affordable units so that your working class, as well as what would be the most affordable, critical affordable housing, like public housing, can be coexisting in a community.
Okay.
So with that, I wanted to take an opportunity to thank the team, Mr. Para and Vivian and Mr. Clay, as well as Erica Mateo, for giving a very thorough presentation, and we look forward to just continuing the discussions as to the progress you're making on this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I would like to introduce Betty M. Colick Wallace, our chairperson of Community Board 16, to come up. After Ms. Colick Wallace, we will have Lorenzo T. Andrews from Brownsville Community Justice Center, followed by Wanda Darden, instructor, adult basic education, representing Central Brooklyn Economic Development, and afterwards, Shirley M. Washington, executive director of the Central Brooklyn Economic Development. If there are any other individuals who wanted to testify, please fill out a slip so we can have you on, as the lineup continues to remain open. It will soon be closed. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy President, and to all of you who have given us the opportunity to state the cause from Community Board 16. On June 24th, during the regular monthly public meeting, Community Board 16, having a total of 47 voted, 27 in favor, 1 against, 3 abstentions, to approve the site selection for property located at 444 Thomas Boylan Street, Block 3496, Lot 4, for use as a community justice center on condition that financial assistance be provided to non-for-profit organizations that presently lease office space at 444 Thomas S. Boylan Street and provide an array of educational and employment services, GED, job referral, resume writing, and homework assistance to community residents who face personal and systemic barriers to employment. Several non-for-profit have expressed that they will encounter hardship because they do not have sufficient funds in their budget to relocate. Furthermore, Community Board 16 requests that those non-for-profit organizations that must relocate be given preference to return to 444 Thomas S. Boylan Street once construction is complete. And thank you again.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. I wanted to ask the next speaker, Lorenzo T. Andrews, to come up. And while Lorenzo's coming up, I just wanted to take an opportunity to thank the staff of Borough Hall, our land use director, Richard Barrick, our new intern, Jonathan Marable, who is from Pratt University. Thank you very much. And Anthony, I don't know if Anthony's here still. Thank you so much from our policy unit. This is the great staff that we depend on, and I just wanted to take the time to say thank you. Go ahead, Lorenzo.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
I'm not with the Community Justice Center. I probably filled it out wrong, ma'am.
Oh, yes.
I'm totally
Okay.
against it.
Okay.
Everything that these people had just came up here and said, I think is good with I'm sorry, I'm just lost for words because a friend of mine's child just was murdered in the streets of Brownsville. So it's like I could flip a coin and say, well, we need this criminal court or we don't. I think that we need more community-based organizations to fill it. Our forefathers, Meyer Lansky, John Gotti, and Mike Tyson, these are the things that my community follow. But I really don't think that it really needs to be a criminal court. A criminal court in the middle of Brownsville is just no good. Because it's a war going on out there, and this criminal court is not going to stop in Brownsville. I can't vouch what Jocko said because he lives way on the other side of Brownsville in the plaza where BRC is at. I can't really vouch to what goes on in Red Hook, but I know that they had the same program in Harlem, and this program is not working in Harlem. 200 gang members was just arrested on felony 1 conspiracy. So how effective will this program be? You move poorer people into shelters and you don't even help them. The parks are messed up. The education is messed up. Why we are not fixing what's going on the outside? Giuliani didn't build a criminal court on 42nd Street when Disney wanted it, so why is that for us? Brownsville has never gotten anything, nothing. Thank you, ma'am.
Lorenzo, thank you for coming and testifying. Lorenzo, don't walk away. No, quite all right. I appreciate the time you took and your well-spoken testimony and heartfelt concern that we deserve more is accurate. And I want to be able to commit to you that Borough Hall will work with you and your council member, Darlene Mealy, to making sure that we identify key projects together that we can continue to invest in so that we're not just depending on a criminal court justice system, but that we're turning it on its head to be able to reduce the cases. And we have to make sure that we're able to do both and not one and sacrifice the other.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Wanda Darden, and I am the Adult Basic Education Instructor at 444 Thomas Boylan. I am employed with Central Brooklyn Economic Development Corporation, and I've been there for 5 years. I'm coming from Broward County, Florida. Understanding, if you know anything about politics in Florida, you know that can be the banana republic at times. I wanted to go somewhere where I could really make a difference. I have a 20-year-old son, a 17-year-old son, and a 16-year-old son. My second son is now just graduating in the wonderful arena over there, the Barclays Arena, with 1,301 students. So it was really wonderful, great scholarship going on. And as a mother of 3 young teens, African Americans that have so-called broken the statistics and been able to surpass a lot of things that comes against us. As a mother, I wanted to share with the community. So what I did is I looked on the map and I wanted to find where it was the worst place that I could possibly be other than Newark, New Jersey, where my parents were from. And I came to Brownsville. I've been there 5 years, and I can tell you I've never experienced anything like this in my life, so much that I just moved there within the past 6 months. Because there was no way that I could walk away. It just takes you 10 minutes walking through Brownsville to see the dysfunction, to see the deprivation, the poverty, the sight pollution, the sound pollution, so much pollution in such a small area with such little children and so many women. It's a lot of women and children. So in my 5 years of teaching, when we had a target of 129 students, we went past that to 139 with a waiting list of over 60. We have graduated with adult basic education over 85% of those that have come in the past 5 years. Now, adult basic education is not a GED. It deals with things that are multi-generational and intergenerational. So we're dealing with the mothers and fathers, the grandparents, the caretakers of those that are supposedly going to come from that precinct 73 across the street to 444 Boylan. What I've been doing for the past 5 years has made such a difference. One example, I had a grandmother, 42, a mother, 21, and her daughter, 3 years old, all sitting in my same class for 6 months. The mother has now gone from the grandmother went from not having a high school diploma to getting her GED, getting employment and working around the corner at the school on Bristol. Her daughter, who was a high school dropout for 5 years, was able to get her high school diploma, GED, and to get her daughter into a daycare center. I also had her 19-year-old son in the class, who, by the way, is locked back up. I just found out today that he's serving 3 years. The recidivism rate is extremely high with youth going into the criminal justice system. And it's not just the Brownsville area, it's criminal justice. The educational system in New York is deplorable. The reading, the literacy, it's deplorable. What we need in Brownsville is services for families and mothers. What we need is when they walk into the building, which has been happening in Brownsville, what you see is one problem, what you thought was one situation. You find out that it's, the 17-year-old, the 20-year-old that was arrested and sent back home, they're actually going through major problems of no food, abuse, and other ACS situations or HRA situations in the home. When you have over 20% employment in one area, you will know that there are social services there. Criminal justice is there. There is not lack of police services there. There is a lack of support services for parents. There is a lack of actual true political support. There are politicians, but as we know, a lot of them have gotten moved away and carted out for not doing the right thing and not defending this area. Right now, it's really important that we look at access to family support services, that we look towards mentoring programs that are intergenerational, that we look towards community awareness, involvement, and outreach that is not based upon you already being involved with the criminal justice system. We are looking for diversity sessions that are cultural, educational, and addresses the sexual lifestyles of the individuals. We're looking for domestic violence prevention and awareness topics for domestic violence, which inundates our area. We're looking for more educational and vocational coaching before there has been a dropout situation. We're looking for efficient use of technology, for emergency child care options, for not only GED preparation, but for specialized tests that will also determine whether or not there are learning disabilities or emotional or behavioral dysfunctions before they've been involved in the criminal justice system. I followed the murals that they put on the walls. I watched what they did online. I paid attention to the newsletters that people could actually pay for subscriptions online, and I wondered how many of those people that were involved were going to get some type of outcome from what was being done. I wanted to know how much they're actually being trained and receiving apprenticeship, because what we have done at Central Brooklyn has been phenomenal with changing the lives of multi-generations in one home. And this is with the help of DYCD and other organizations. But since the criminal justice has been there, there has been a wonderful partnership between their young individuals that are involved joining our adult basic education and GED program. And I noticed that there was a major difference between those students that I taught that came from the criminal justice program and those that just walked in off the streets. And with all due respect to the criminal justice program, I really love that they have a great way of mentoring and I would say providing a babysitter for these individuals. It is a tough job that you do. Sometimes I think that prisons were made for those purposes because the people are very challenging. But they need supervision. And that has been what I've noticed, is that the people need supervision. Whereas the other people from the community who just so happen to need help and are searching that walk into the building, they are a lot more responsible. Although they have not been involved with criminal justice, they're more faithful. They are actually moving and progressing through the program in a lot easier way. So what I would like to see is somehow an incorporation that doesn't necessitate so much supervision. If there's a way that they can intermingle with the public more and that they're not criminalized. But in the meantime, this good program that we do have, where we are meeting the needs of the families, we don't displace those that are already there. Because the whole point of education and anything to help a community is to re-engage them with being self-sufficient and to displace the one group of people that didn't criminalize them, which are the nonprofits, and they don't demoralize them, they're not feeling demeaned, and they don't have the stigmas of going to ACS and HRA. I believe it's really important that we take that into consideration. I've enjoyed working with the youth. I look forward to continue working with them. But I do believe it's very important that we look at this prime area and really take into consideration that there are a lot of people in the community that, although you may not see them, they really rely on that 444 Boylan as a beacon of where they can get help in an emergency. So taking that into consideration, I am neither for nor against until I know that we won't have to displace any more people that are actually looking for help and receiving help, and that we don't criminalize a whole community for the sake of anyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arden. Shirley Washington.
Good afternoon. My name is Shirley Washington. I'm Executive Director for Central Brooklyn Economic Development Corp. I have been in Brownsville for 25 years at the same agency. I have no problem with the Brownsville Community Justice Center. I enjoy working with them, and I'm here on behalf of the nonprofit agencies that's in the building that needs help in order for us to continue to service our community. Elon has spoken, I voiced my opinion to him at the community board meeting that no one had reached out to my agency or several more non-for-profit agency for help. Now, we understand that the rent is very high now. We can't find a decent place to move to because the rent, they asked them for so much rent. At the beginning, we had an understanding. We thought that we was going to get help with moving out, and then we'll be able to move back into the building after finished renovation. I spoke to Elon about that, and he says he did not know about that. They was only dealing with moving out city agency, and they would get help to move back. Like I said, I've been in the community for 25 years, and I've seen a lot of family misplaced, relocated. You're supposed to bring them back in the community, never does. One of the projects that they was doing was Hope 6. Over 4,500 people got displaced, and they never brought them back into the community, and they never gave them the service that they promised. I don't want this to happen to us again. I love Brownville. I love working with the youth. I work with federal probation. When the people come out, they send them to my agency. We do community service. They do community service, and I have a good reputation with the rapport with them, and we in Central Brooklyn we have worked with Downstate Medical Center, Brookdale, the banks, placing people with jobs, doing internship, and all of that.
So, Ms. Washington, I just want to make sure, because we have another speaker.
Yes.
From the same agency, your
Okay,
organization.
so I'll
who's going
just
to
cut
come
it
up as
short.
well. But I have a question. I wanted to just understand. You're telling me that no one contacted you in June to participate in a meeting?
Not in June. They had a meeting downstairs.
Mm-hmm.
I was not there. I was out sick.
Okay, but who's your deputy?
I just got a deputy. She's
Okay, so
here.
there was no deputy at that time?
No.
And no other staff member was sent?
Yes, she was there.
She was there?
Yes.
So she was present at the meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So they did reach out?
Yes.
Because
No.
you had said that they did not?
Not at first, not, when she went to the meeting,
Mm-hmm.
well, LaShawn, what happened at the meeting?
Well, this isn't an interrogation. If Deshaun signed up, so...
Yes. I'll let her tell you what happened at the
Okay.
meeting because I wasn't there.
Okay.
But I went forward to tell you that Elon reached out to me, and I'm working with him,
Sure.
with JCC.
Sure. So there's
I-
active
It
communication
is.
right
Yes,
now?
yes.
Okay.
He keep emailing, we email back and forth, and he,
And you don't if you don't feel comfortable with emailing, there can be a meeting face-to-face.
well, we working fine with the
Okay,
emails.
okay.
And I talked to him on the phone.
Okay.
And he's trying to help me to find a place.
So it's my understanding that there can be a symbiotic opportunity to marry shared space.
Sure, sure.
And you are welcoming that opportunity?
Yes.
Okay, and the issue as far as your concern of dealing with having to move out, is your concern also the issue of
The financial part.
the financial part to the moving costs?
Yes, exactly.
The having to move out and move back in?
Mhm.
And is that part of the discussion?
We didn't have that discussion yet. We're up to the point that he's finding me a shared space with someone. And what he have done, it looks like it's going to work out for Central Brooklyn and JCC. So,
But you still have the financial burden, which plays a critical
very critical.
cost to your
cost
budget.
To my budget. Cost. Last year they cut the budget. Now the money that they took out could help me to move and like with the rewind the telephone, getting the telephone service and all that stuff. But I guess that I have to go to my funding source and speak to them about helping with that part of the problem.
Of course. And who are your funding sources? Governmental?
DYCD, Department of Youth and Community Development.
Have you had any conversations with them?
I wrote them a letter to let them know, but we can't, the budget just went in last 2 months ago, and they can't, we can't have a dialogue about modifying the budget for all until after the first month, after July 1st. So that'd be
Correct.
August or so.
We just had a budget season that ended
Yes.
June 30th, and so the new fiscal year began July
The
1st.
first.
A new budget has been voted upon with the
Yes.
city council, and so I'm sure that these are the critical days ahead
Yes.
to finalize, to incorporate those moving costs.
Yes.
And so I'm offering Borough Hall to assist if we can, to help you engage in those conversations aggressively, because if they're not factored in at this time, and you get your contract and it's not within those numbers, this particular move, we'll work with the mayor's office to be able to address this matter and just have a dialogue, interagency dialogue, to help really go through a fine-comb tooth effect of.
And I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And I'll be looking forward to working with the Borough President office
Absolutely.
and the Mayor's office
Excellent.
in this situation.
Excellent. I appreciate that, Ms. Washington.
And thank you so much.
Thank you. And LaShawn Allen Muhammad was going to come up to testify? It's up to you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I will be brief. Good evening. My name is LaShawn Allen Muhammad. I am the newly appointed Deputy Director for Central Brooklyn Economic Development Corps. But I am a Brownsville-born product, and I'm a proud Brownsville product. I was born in Samuel J. Tilden Projects and born in Brookdale Hospital, and I was raised there and lived in Brownsville for 20 years. I also ran a nonprofit called the Brownsville Youth Association for 7 years. It was a workforce development agency. As far as I understand, it was the first workforce development or employment agency in the neighborhood. So Brownsville is in my blood. And so I'm so excited to be back working with Ms. Washington in Central Brooklyn. You know, as she stated, it's been a staple in the community for 25 years. But what I want to address, and just to add to what my colleague said this evening, is just the equity of this initiative. And I just want to make sure that that we're looking at this properly. If the city truly wants to put a community justice center in Brownsville, surely they want to see that the agencies that have been serving the community residents of Brownsville for so long also receive the resources that they need to continue to do the work and expand on the work that they're doing. Just as Wanda mentioned, the issues that are in Brownsville are just it's just incredible, and that they're getting worse. I think the brother said it, there really seems like there's a civil war happening. So for agencies that have been serving in this community in a multi-service center to be faced with having to be displaced without resources really, to me, sends the wrong message. And so I just wanted to make sure that we're looking at this properly, and if this is something that the city and the Borough of Brooklyn and the community district wants, that we look at this equitably and that everyone receives the resources that they need to make this a successful initiative.
It's a fair statement, and it is something that we are certainly monitoring, and we will engage to be able to have what would be the best scenarios possible so that the agencies, as far as the nonprofit is concerned, does not suffer to the point where it gets displaced or even worse than that, collapses, okay?
That's right.
And so this is something that we want to continue to have a dialogue beyond today's hearing. I do recommend that you follow this ULURP process into the city council. You're a city council member.
Yes.
Council member Darlene Neely will have the opportunity to review this as well. And then those are the opportunities beyond today where you can continue to engage in this particular point that is very important and is not being overshadowed by any other plan.
Right.
Because as much as the center is important, we also know without the supportive services and wraparound services, the Justice Center alone is not a solution.
That's right.
All right? Thank
Great.
you so much.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Good evening.
So I believe this was our last hearing, calendar item, and this item is now closed. I want to thank everyone in the public hearing who participated, testified, or just observed being here today. On behalf of the Borough President and I'd like to express that we will be thoroughly reviewing these applications, and what we have heard today has been taken into consideration. We will soon submit what would be his recommendations to the City Planning Commission. I would like to take this opportunity to remind you that the City Planning Commission will also hold a public hearing on this matter. The hearing is now adjourned.